Behind every face is a story waiting to be told. I'm your host, Camilla. Welcome to What's Your Story? Conversations with Everyday Souls. On this night, the air grows cold and the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. Over 2,000 years ago, long before the jack-o'-lanterns and candy, the ancient Celts celebrated Samhain, a night when spirits were said to cross from their world into ours. Fires burned bright in the darkness to keep the wandering dead at bay. Centuries later, the church tried to tame the night, calling it All Hallows' Eve, the eve of All Saints' Day, but the old fears lingered, and so did the old traditions. People dressed in costumes to fool the spirits. They went door to door begging for offerings in exchange for prayers for the departed, a practice called souling, the dark ancestor of what we now call trick-or-treating. In those days, lanterns were carved not from pumpkins, but from turnips and potatoes, glowing skulls meant to ward off evil. When the Irish came to America, they found the pumpkin, large, hollow, and perfect for carving grim faces to keep the spirits away. The colors of the night still carry their meaning: orange for the harvest, black for death and the coming winter. And even now, as we light our candles and fill our bags with candy, beware. For on rare nights when the moon is full, Halloween becomes what it once was, a night when the past and present, the living and the dead, all meet again. From ancient fears to modern mysteries, the unknown is never far. In this episode, you'll hear stories from those who felt it, the presence in the room when no one's there, the voice that shouldn't exist. This is where history ends and haunting begins. Amber's story.
This story started when I was around 5, before even 4 or 5 years old, before I started school. My father, who believed in started believing in my mom's ability, noticed that I was starting to show it, but because my mom wouldn't go for the purpose of the fact she had to work, and without not telling her, he took me to his workplace, which happens to be here where we live, the Agoma Steel. During that time that we were going there, all I thought was he was just showing me his workplace and where he worked, which is normal because sometimes the fathers would bring their kids, like a shadow sort of work thing. I was excited because he brought my brother, so I was thinking I was going to get to see where my dad got to work. I was excited. Well, anyway, we got there, and he took me in the far back where there was trailers. There were like office trailers before they actually had the office that they do now. When you it was wide open, okay? There's dirt, concrete, and all that. But here's the thing you got to know. During, I can't remember the year, but it was close to the 1950s, 1960s, somewhere in there. There was a huge explosion at the Agoma Steel. A lot of men, women, well, the workforce, a lot of the ones that were working that day, a lot of them were, unfortunately, it was a bad accident. My grandfather on my mom's side was lucky because he was sick that day. But the thing is, though, because of that, they were having supernatural occurrences going on there. So when he took me there, he was hoping I'd be able to see to prove that there was something going on, because a lot of the other workers were seeing it happen too. And this one trailer, a lot of the employees couldn't get in because it was either locked, but they said they saw things moving around, shadows and all that sort of stuff happening, and damage happening to these inside this this one office trailer, like these huge, not a modular home, but sort of style, like living, not one of the trailers, like at a trailer park sort of type trailer. They turn into office space for the employees. Nobody would work in there because of this one entity. Didn't tell you his name, but I do know at the time, I'll explain later, he was an angry individual. I don't blame him. But he was angry all his life anyway, so he held on to it. Anyway, my dad just happened, the door opened. We walked in, and I saw the office space, but yet I felt a chill go up my spine. When you're young, you don't know what that is. You don't know why. You just feel uneasy. And I did see entities out throughout my life when I was young, starting to see them. But this feeling, I wanted to leave with my dad. I did not want to stay in that trailer, but he told me, and I believed him, I was going to be safe. Yeah, you're a kid. You believe you're a parent. It's normal. Anyway, I was told to sit on the couch. Well, there was an area where it had a couch. It had a sitting area for people who sat there. I sat down. My dad said, "You wait here. I'll be right back." I believed him. He left. The door closed. He shut the door. He left. I didn't see what way he went because of where I was asked to stay. I couldn't see very much, except for the fact it was sunny. A sunny day. And it was fall too. Early fall, just starting. So it wasn't hot in the office space at all. The windows were open for the air. Now here's the kickers. As soon as I'm sitting there, the uneasiness happened again. And yeah, you could say, oh, the window's open. It's cold because the windows are open. This was a different cold. My breath, I could see my breath. And it wasn't that cold in that place. Because, like I said, it wasn't winter. It started to get colder. And then all of a sudden the windows all closed at the same time. Yeah, little, young. You stand up real quick. And I wanted to leave. And I kept looking around and I was heading toward the door. Then the paper started to blow around because the wind kicked up in there. Here's the thing, I will explain later. There was a camera. So all what I'm saying is they did check on it. I didn't touch anything on the desks. I didn't move anything around. All I wanted was out of that space. I was little. Yes, I'm going to keep saying that. I was little. But seriously enough, it was terrifying. I went to run, and then all of a sudden I felt this. If I didn't get out of there, I was going to be in trouble. I had to leave because the fear came over me that something was there and it could hurt me. So I went toward the door, and I heard a growl, like a man-human growl, not a creature or anything. And a man calling me he was very verbal and very nasty with his words. And because of things, I'm not going to say what it was. All I know was he was very rude and angry. And it was terrifying. So when I was heading toward the door, at first I couldn't open the door because for some reason it wouldn't open. Then I was finally able to open the door and went to push the screen door open, and it felt like something grabbed the back of my dress where my skirt area was. And I had a little apron on because it was part of my dress sort of thing. And I was pulling because it felt like somebody was holding on to me, not wanting me to leave. And I was pulling, and I was yelling for help. I didn't see anybody at first, but then I didn't even see my dad. All of a sudden I gave myself a good pull, and I asked for help. Help me, please. Somebody help me. Something helped release me from the grip. Call it what you want, but all I know is something helped me release. But on the thing, my dress got a little ripped. Not bad, just a light tear. But when you're little, that means a lot. But I turned around, and here's the thing. The individual coming toward the thing, and the door was just starting to close, you could see the outline. And I could see half of his face with a hard helmet on and one eye showing, and it was pissed off. The other side of his face was shadowed. Like parts of him, I guess, that were damaged or blown off during the explosion, sorry for saying that, was like in a shadow-like form. But he was wearing work boots and he was coming toward it. And all of a sudden, I backed up and the door slammed and shut and locked. And all I know is I turned around and I ran. And I saw my dad, then I saw a friend of ours. I didn't run toward my dad, I ran toward my mom, our friend. And I got into and I jumped into his arms because I was terrified. All I kept saying is, take me home, take me back to my mommy. I don't want to be here. Years later, when I got a little older to understand, that man, yes, he was, parts of him, that's where the explosion happened, parts of it. Because they tore down that part of the warehouse because of the fact it was a mess. And there was no way to clean it up. And building law and all that sort of thing. Well, they figured parts of him, or residue of his energy, was in that one, underneath that one trailer. And he absorbed himself, or whatever, he was part of that trailer. But the camera showed the wind blowing around. And then when I was running, they saw like an outline of an individual running toward after me through the wall. He was kind of thing. And then a light helping me get out. That was my first experiences that I recall with supernatural.
Elsa's stories.
This one happened somewhere under the age of 5 anyways. So I was in Wales, and I was in the back garden of my aunt's ranch-style dwelling. It was built probably in the 1500s, and it had a stable in the back garden. Just, I think it was either a 2 or 4 horse stable, I can't remember. And she had her horse Whisper back there. And I used to like going into the back garden, and Whisper would just massage the top of my head. And I thought that was funny. It was great. And this one time I was out there, it was I think it was the first time I was out there, and this farmhand came from the left side of the property of the house, and he was carrying buckets over his shoulders, like there was a, you know how in the old days they used to have like sticks across the back with the strings carrying the fluids. So he had that in, and he was carrying it, and he stopped, and he said to me, "What you doing, love?" And I was like, playing with Whisper. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm off to taking water to the," and I can't remember if he said sheep or cows, but he was taking water to livestock. And I was like, "Oh." And then he said, "Be careful, love." And then he said, "I'm off now. I'm going to go and finish my job. I'll come visit you again." And then he walked off into the mist, because, you know, back then England was always foggy. So yeah, it was foggy, and he walked off. And when I say walked off, I noticed that below his knees was missing. So it was just knee to head that was there. So he was a apparition, a ghost, whatever you want to call it. But he was friendly. This second story also comes from the same house where I saw the ghost in the back garden. This was the first time I was at this house, and it was just after we'd come back from Africa. And my parents and my aunt and uncle were out in the hallway in the kitchen area where the staircase was. And I was in the dining room, and I was just interested in this fireplace that was made of sandstone and lime. So the texture of it was crumbly, and I just liked it. I was little. I was under the age of 5. And I started picking at it because it was just neat to touch. And the next thing is this older gentleman came in, and he said, "Stop doing that. It took me all my life to build that." And then he said, "Sit down at the table and stay there until your parents get you." So I did. I sat at the head of the table. My back was towards the fireplace, and I was overlooking the big dining room table, and I could see the hallway on the left where my parents and everybody was. And then finally my parents and that came in, and they said, "What are you doing, Elsa?" And I said, "Granddad told me to stay here." And they were like, "Granddad's not here, it's just us." This one was in Liverpool, Huyton, Liverpool. And it was in our house on Rupert Road. And there was a bomb shelter on the left side of the house. And I used to like playing in the bomb shelter because there was a little girl in there. And she was dressed in like a white Victorian style clothing. And she used to say strange things to me like, this is where we used to play, and my mum's not here anymore. And then I would go and I would tell my mum and dad, and after a while my mum and dad would stop me from playing in there, and they'd say, "You can't go in there because there's no little girl." And I said, "No, she's there. She's always there." And I said, "Come see." So I led them to her, and she didn't come out. And I said, "She's usually back there on the bench," because there was a bench inside the bomb shelter. And then I just remember it was either one of my parents saying, "Leave her alone." So they were actually saying to the ghost, "Leave me alone." And I never did see the little girl again. But yeah, I just remember she had blonde hair, and she had a big white ribbon in her hair, and she was wearing this beautiful white dress with an apron on it, and very much like Victorian style clothing, I would say. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking because the bomb shelter was World War II, it was likely during that time that she was dressed. So 1939 to 1945. I'm going to move forward to when I was a teenager, and I used to get up every morning around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, because I was rowing. I was in a forecox rowing at Rytack, and several mornings in a row, I had this. I got up, went into the kitchen, put the kettle on to make a cup of tea, and to have my breakfast. And something was breathing down my neck and moving my hair, and I could hear it like, and my hair was moving, and I was so terrified I didn't turn around. I was just standing there at the sink, holding on to the kettle as I was filling it with water, and I was just terrified. And then finally, once, I did that, I ran into my room as soon as it left, and I got ready, and then I went rowing. And then it happened again the next day, and I was so terrified. And then on the third day, it happened again, and my mom actually got up and said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Something keeps doing this to me." And she goes, "Oh, well, you're not going to rowing today." And that particular day, the row team had a misfortune where the boat, I guess, had a bit of a capsize, and I wasn't in the boat at the time. We had this apartment on the second floor in Brampton, just across from the Bramley City Center. One of the condos there, we had a nice condo. And our spare bedroom that had the solarium off of it used to have some weird occurrences where the cupboard door would open and close on its own. And we'd just hear strange sounds in that apartment. We come to find out that our apartment had been empty for a year or two because there'd been some kind of criminal activity that had happened there. My mother-in-law stayed with us. Mother-in-law and father-in-law stayed with us one weekend, and she got very frightened because she saw a little girl and a mother coming in and out of that room. Yeah, she just got frightened and said she'd never stay in our apartment again. But yeah, we used to hear the closet door opening and closing, and like toys would get moved, and somewhere I have a couple of pictures where I've taken a picture of my son, and there's like, you can see orbs coming out of that room.
A piece of my story. This is my first paranormal encounter that I can remember. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, we lived in a townhouse complex in southern Ontario. Our house was an end unit, and there was a gap between our house and the next house. So we had neighbors on both sides, but only one side was actually connected to our house. I'm going to set the scene here. Our house faced west. When you went up the stairs, the west wall had the bathroom. So as you came up the stairs, the bathroom was slightly to the right along that wall. It wasn't directly in front at the top of the stairs. And along the north wall were my parents' bedroom, a linen closet, and then my brother's bedroom. The east wall was my bedroom. Our north wall also connected to our neighbor's house. We had a smoke detector that was on the ceiling between my parents' bedroom door and the linen closet door. And if you were standing in my bedroom looking out, you can look straight down the hallway into the bathroom. So this kind of gives you a visual of what the upstairs looked like. This one particular night, I had fallen asleep and then woken up sometime in the middle of the night, and I couldn't fall back asleep. The house was dark and everyone was sleeping. Being so young, I was afraid of the dark. And during that time, I slept with my door open. I've had moments in my life where I became so afraid of the dark that I would sleep with my door closed. And I thought, if there's something going on out there, I don't want to know, and I don't want it coming into my room. So had my moments of switching back and forth, but during this particular time, the door was open. I was lying in bed, tossing and turning because I couldn't fall back asleep. And eventually, I remember lying on my back and staring up at the ceiling. Then after some time, I sat up and I looked to my left, out into the hallway. The little green light on the smoke detector had cast a perfect light into the darkness. What I mean is, usually at night, that little green light would just be scattered, or sometimes in the darkness, you just see the little green light, but then you don't see that scattered kind of green with the darkness. But this particular time, I could see exactly where the green light ended and where the darkness of the night began. And just below that, in front of my parents' bedroom doorframe, there was a tall woman leaning against the wall, watching me. I couldn't see her face. Her entire figure was just a shadow, but I could tell that she was watching me. And she was wearing some sort of pleated skirt that was just above her knees. I froze and stared back. Not sure for how long. It felt like it lasted forever, but in reality, it was probably only a few seconds to a minute. And after a moment of watching me, she got up off the wall and started walking towards me. And in a very mean Polish voice, she said, "Go to sleep." I got so scared that I lay down on my right side, so my back was to the door, threw the covers over my head and shut my eyes, hoping that nothing would happen to me. When I woke up in the morning, all seemed to be fine, and I never saw her again. The fire is almost out. and the air has grown still. But remember, when you tell stories of the strange, sometimes the strange listens back. And if you've experienced something you can't explain, I want to hear it. Leave me a comment on Instagram at yourstorypodcast25 or send your story to yourstorypodcast25@gmail.com. Whether you're starting your Halloween morning or ending a long haunted night, thanks for being here with me. Stay safe and don't look behind you.